So one of the things that I remember struggling with as a freshman particularly, but also when I came back into my second year learning algebra, was deciding whether a particular question wanted me to add terms or to multiply terms. And that's an understandable problem, and everybody suffers from it. It doesn't mean that you won't, that it's going to preclude you from getting good at math, or that you won't be able to overcome it and start becoming more fluent in mathematics. But it does mean that you have to clarify for yourself and make clear for yourself a few things about how math is written down now. So the first case we're going to look at is if there are no parentheses. Okay? Well, let's say you have a sentence, a mathematical sentence that doesn't have, or a mathematical expression that doesn't have any parentheses. Well, so for example, something like, I don't know, something very simple, like 3 plus 2. Well, that's clearly an addition problem. You've known that forever. And it's just 3 plus 2 is 5. So common sense doesn't go away. If something looks simple, just use your common sense to do what you've always done. If you have something like 5x minus 9x, well, this is an addition problem as well, addition or subtraction. Remember, in algebra now, we think of addition and subtraction as being just two sides of the same coin. So if you use your rules for addition, the 5x is positive, the 9x is negative, different signs. So we're going to subtract, and 5 from 9 is 4x, and use the sign of the bigger number. The 9 was bigger, it was negative. Okay, so there hasn't been any multiplication there. So that's all been either addition or subtraction. Okay, you can think of that whichever way you want to in terms of addition or subtraction. But what we're trying to make sure here is that we don't end up multiplying when we shouldn't. So if there are no parentheses, then we're talking about addition or subtraction. Okay, so that's point number 1. The second case would be that if you have a sign immediately in front of parentheses. Okay, so a sign immediately in front of parentheses. Signs with no number or letter in between the sign and the parentheses. Okay. So we've talked about this earlier in this section, and I've posted videos on this earlier, rules of signs in front of parentheses. So what I'm thinking about here is something like 6 plus parentheses 10 and minus 4y minus negative 3y. Okay, so cases like this where you have a sign, in the first case a plus, or in the second case a minus, immediately in front of parentheses with no number or letter in between. The sign, then the parentheses. Sign, then the parentheses. No number or letter in between. In these cases, you apply the particular rules for what you do with a sign in front of parentheses. If it's a plus in front of parentheses, you simply remove the parentheses and keep whatever sign was in front of the 10. So 6 plus 10, and then you use addition. So 16. In this case down here, you have minus 4y. And now when you have a minus in front of parentheses, you'll change the sign. So you'll throw away the minus sign, the first minus sign, you'll remove the parentheses and change the sign in here. So it's going to become plus 3y. So minus 4y plus 3y. There are no parentheses anymore, so that's an addition problem now, or subtraction, whatever you like. They have different signs, so you subtract the numbers. 3 from 4 is 1y, and keep the sign of the bigger number. 4 was bigger, so it keep the sign of the 4, which was negative. So negative 1y, or negative y if you want to use negative y. So, this is also going to be an addition or subtraction problem. Okay, so when you have a plus or minus sign in front of parentheses, it's basically an addition or subtraction problem. You can think of that in another way as well. You can think of it as distributing either plus 1 or minus 1. If you do that, then you're introducing multiplication to it. use whichever way works for you. I tend to use this. I tend to think about what happens a positive sign in front of parentheses, what happens a negative sign in front of parentheses. But again, that's how you tackle those. Okay, the third case. Okay, so numbers or letters in front of parentheses. Now we're into multiplication. Okay. Apologies for that. So what an example of that would look like would be, for example, 1 plus 3 parentheses 11. Now, hopefully you can see the difference between what we did in number 2 and what we're doing down here. In number 2, the sign came immediately in front of parentheses. Now I have a number in front of the parentheses. Another example of that would be 2a minus 4a and then 3. Okay, now I've said in front of, this is an example where it's behind, and this one actually has an extra complication as well. So this particular one is quite complicated. Anyhow, what we do in a case like this, if a number is in front of parentheses and we're using multiplication, so the first thing we do is the multiplication. 3 times 11 is 33. So this is going to be 1 plus 33. So you multiply here and then you add. So that's going to be 34. Now this is where we have to be very careful. We have 2a minus 4a times 3. A number written right beside parentheses. No sign separating them. The number is right beside the parentheses. That means we're talking multiplication here. So it's going to be 4a times 3. Okay, so 3 times 4a, that's going to be 12a. So we have 2a minus 9. Strictly speaking, because this multiplication that we've just done followed, we said it was 12a, followed a minus sign. There was a minus sign immediately in front of this multiplication step. We should put the answer into parentheses. Won't affect this one too much, but certainly it's something you should get in the habit of doing. So now we have a minus sign in front of parentheses. When I put a minus sign in front of parentheses, it changes the sign, so we'll take off the parentheses and we'll change the sign of the 12a, so we get 2a, and then it's going to be, it was 12a, but the minus in front means it's minus 12a. There are no parentheses anymore, so we're now talking about addition and subtraction. We have different signs, so we're going to subtract, so it's going to be 10a, and the minus was in front of the 12. 12 is a bigger number, and minus in front of that, so 12a is your answer. Okay, so that one's quite complicated, but basically what this comes down to is that when we have numbers or letters in front of parentheses, or behind parentheses, as in this case here, then we're talking about multiplication first. Okay, so it's going to be multiplication. Multiplication. And then, if required. Okay, may not always be required, but if it is, that's when it comes in. And then the fourth one, the last one in this video, is going a little bit long, so when you have two parentheses side to side, back to back. That's going to be a very clear case of multiplication. Okay? Don't think that one causes any problems. I think we all know that when parentheses come back to back, we're multiplying. So, for example, if we have 7 times 2, we know that that means multiplication. Parentheses are coming back to back, so that's going to be 14. And if we have 3m in parentheses and negative 5m in parentheses, we also know that that's multiplication. It's going to be a plus times a minus, so we're multiplying, and we have different signs, and multiplying different signs gives us a minus. 3 by 5 is 15, and an m by an m is going to be m squared. So those are the 4 cases that we come across regularly, and I think sorry about this, just trying to squeeze it all into the frame for you. I think the one that causes the problem is number 3. Okay, the one that causes problems are number 3. We have to be very careful because we're dealing with order of operations. We also have to recognize when is there multiplication and when is it addition. Okay, so if you have a number or a letter written immediately in front of or behind parentheses, we've got to multiply first. Okay? Alright, hopefully that didn't confuse you too much, and thanks for watching. It was a longer one than usual.